Right. Good morning, everyone who's able to join us live. Good afternoon and good evening to those who are watching the recordings. I have a, I have a kitty cat trying to pull off my hat and get my attention here today. That's all right. That means he's excited and happy. I'm excited and happy. This is May 9th, 2025. And on today's edition, we're talking about, sorry, the kitty cat's really active behind me today. Habemus Papam Americanum. We have an American Pope, Pope Leo the 14th. So we're going to talk about that today and some of the implications. You may remember just 2 weeks ago, Pope Francis died, Pope Francis the First, very popular Pope in America and elsewhere around the world. And after a period of mourning, this week the College of Cardinals entered what we call the conclave, which is where they choose a new Pope. So the conclave, this is when all the cardinals get together. There are 251 cardinals, and 134 of them are eligible to vote in the conclave. They have to be under 80 years old to vote. At a certain age, they're no longer eligible to vote. So they need a two-thirds vote, which means they needed 90 votes of those 134 to elect a new pope. This is how the conclave works. The cardinals are really strictly sequestered with no contact with the outside world. And so, in a world where it's very hard to keep any secrets from anybody in any context, somehow the Catholic Church has been doing it when they have their conclaves of cardinals. In fact, they go into a little kind of hotel area. They are strictly guarded. All of their phones and electronics are confiscated before they go in. They literally have no contact with the outside world while they are voting for a new pope. And in the conclave, they vote by secret ballot. So each of them writes down a name on a little piece of paper, a little slip of paper, and then they hand in their slip of paper. Then the votes are counted for that ballot. And after the votes are counted, ballots are burned. So it remains secret and anonymous. All the votes are secret and anonymous. They are supposed to be only guided by the Holy Spirit and not by outside influences. And then if they don't elect a cardinal on the or a pope on the first ballot, if they don't get that two-thirds majority, they just keep voting until a pope is elected. Sometimes this can go on for weeks and dozens of votes. In this case, it happened very quickly by historical standards. After only 2 days and four ballots, they elected a new pope yesterday. So let's talk about our new pope. His name is Robert Francis Cardinal Prevost. He was born in Chicago and raised in the United States. He has a degree in mathematics from Villanova and a degree in theology from the Catholic Theological Seminary in Chicago. He is 69 years old, which is relatively young for a pope. That's most popes don't get elected until their mid to late 70s. And at 69, that means if he can stay in good health, and apparently he's someone who does keep himself in good health and good shape, he might be able to remain pope for a while. He's a member of the Order of St. Augustine. This is a 700-year-old order based on the tradition of a man known as Augustine of Hippo. He was a 4th century bishop in Roman North Africa, what was then known as Numidia and what is now part of Algeria. He was a theologian and philosopher, and his writings deeply influenced a lot of things in Western civilization. In fact, in my undergraduate political theory classes, St. Augustine's writings were required reading, and he emphasized community, contemplation, and service. So that gives you some idea of the nature of the order of St. Augustine there. So Cardinal Prevost, he entered the Order of St. Augustine, and for a decade he was the prior general. In other words, he was the leader of the Order of St. Augustine. So he rose to prominence within that order. He was a longtime missionary in South America. He specialized in being a missionary in the nation of Peru, and he was the bishop of Chiclayo in Peru, which is one of the major cities in Peru. So he did rise to the rank of bishop. And then in 2023, Pope Francis appointed him to be a cardinal. When he came to Rome, and he was then quickly appointed to be the prefect of the dicastery for bishops. Now, what this means is that Cardinal Prevost was in charge of the office that chose bishops for dioceses around the world, which gave him a great deal of authority and the ability to create a power base and a loyalty base. A lot of people saw that appointment as Pope Francis, designating him as his possible successor. His position, again, they gave him tremendous opportunity, and we believe Pope Francis wanted him to be the successor papal candidate. Of course, you can't really know that for sure. So Pope Leo the 14th is now his name. That's the name he chose. He chose the name Leo the 14th. He's the first pope from the United States. In fact, there were a number of Americans waving American flags in front of the basilica there in the Vatican when he was chosen. And this he had been often mentioned as a papal candidate. So we will see where it goes from here. He is the second pope from the Western Hemisphere. Not just he's the first pope born in the United States, but he's also only the second pope from the Western Hemisphere. The first was Francis. So we've now had two in a row from the Western Hemisphere after 2,000 years of no popes from the Western Hemisphere. He is multilingual. He gave his first speech as pope in Latin, Italian, and Spanish, but not English. And that turns out to be a little bit important, and we'll discuss why. And the name Leo the 14th has a lot of significance. It stems from Leo the Great. Leo the Great was a 5th century pope. He was raised in Roman Italy, and he was elected pope during a time of turmoil. In fact, he was elected from kind of a lower rank. A lot of folks don't realize you do not have to be a cardinal to be elected pope. Anybody can be elected pope, and occasionally people come from the lower ranks, bishops, monsignors, priests, and whatnot. And he actually, during that time of turmoil, after he was elected pope, this is when Attila the Hun was invading Europe, and Attila the Hun at the point was conquering a large part of the known world. He met face to face with Attila, negotiated a deal to save Rome. So Leo the Great was no coward. He was a brave man. If he was willing to, a lot of people who met face to face with Attila to negotiate deals lost their heads. But Pope Leo the Great met face to face with Attila and was able to save Rome from being sacked by Attila the Hun. And so his name now has been seen as a sign of strength in serious times of crisis. There is also a bit of an homage to Leo the 13th. Excuse me. Vincenzo Raphael Cardinal Pecci was elected Pope in 1878, and he chose the name Leo the 13th. He served until his death until 1903, and his reign was also a time of crisis in the church and the world. You may remember from your history books, that period is what we call the Gilded Age of capitalism in Western industrialized nations, when capitalism and industry was really on the rise, and when a very few people were consolidating power at the expense of the many, when we had child labor and abusive employees and a lot of stuff that gave rise to the regulations we have now. And Leo the 13th, he was known for advocating for social justice, equality, and the rights of regular working people. And at the time, that was considered pretty brave and controversial. So that tells you something else about our new Pope Leo's chosen name. If you have not yet seen the movie Conclave, I would absolutely recommend it. I saw it in the theater. It is now streaming on Amazon. It is free for Prime members. You definitely should check out the movie Conclave. It is somewhat prescient. It was produced about a year ago. It's somewhat prescient in what happened just this week with the election of a new pope. Not in every way, not in some of the twists and turns, but the movie Conclave gives you an excellent insight into what goes on in the choosing of a pope and all the politicking behind the scenes and what happens when the old pope has a new favorite. And just check out the movie Conclave. It will actually, it's fiction. It's absolutely fictional, but it will give you a lot of insight, and it's incredibly well done. As always, thank you to everyone. Please smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, share with your friends and family. These are the easy things you can do, the free things you can do that help us out a lot. If you like what we're doing, hit that button and help us get the word out. So let's look around doors and corners, as always.
I kept telling him, I said, there's doors and corners, kid. If you don't clear the room, if you don't come in slow, that room will eat you.
Here we go. We're going to go into the room slow.
I kept telling him, I said, there's doors and corners.
and figure out what's going to happen. So some implications from here on out. So some of the signs from the election of Cardinal Prevost that the church is going to continue the legacy of Francis and becoming more liberal and welcoming institution. He's the first American pope. Big deal. He's the second pope from the Western Hemisphere. Again, two in a row now from the Western Hemisphere after going so long with nobody. The choice of Leo as his papal name, showing that he intends to be strong in the face of injustice and that he intends to combat injustice. And he has been a vocal critic of cruelty and authoritarianism. Uh, Cardinal Prevost was very active on social media before becoming elected pope, so we kind of know his feelings on these subjects. Choosing Leo as his name, we know he intends to be strong in the face of reactionary opposition and in a time of crisis in the world. He intends to fight for social justice. He intends to advocate for regular people in a time when the powerful are trying to consolidate control. And we know how he feels about these issues. As he was active on social justice and social media as a bishop and as a cardinal, he was not shy about his opinions on social justice and standing up for regular folks. As Pope, he is not going to be so active on social media, I imagine. Seems very unlikely. He's probably not going to take the bait and engage in politics, but he's going to be working hard behind the scenes on the causes that he cares about. Now, I mentioned that Leo the 14th used three languages in his first papal address: Latin, Italian, and Spanish, but not English. And I mentioned that was important. I think it's important because he's signaling that he's a pope for the world. He's not going to now gloat in some sort of American victory in that now the Americans finally got a pope of their own. He's not going to gloat in that. He's going to be a pope for the world. And he's also giving a nod to the old guard in Europe that he's going to work for them. Most popes have been from Italy, Germany, and Poland. Europe has dominated the papacy. And he's giving a nod that he understands that and he's going to work with them. He's trying not to offend people and go all out on his first day. And very importantly, his election shows that Francis has succeeded in his goal of remaking the Cardinals of the College of Cardinals in his image. Uh, Otherwise, someone like Prevost or an American never would have been elected pope. But Francis apparently worked hard in remaking the College of Cardinals and ensuring that they were on board with his mission so that they would elect a successor who would continue his mission. Now, why an American pope now? A lot of us, in a sense, this is surprising. In a sense, it's not. A lot of us thought we would see an Asian pope or an African pope in our lifetimes, but maybe not an American pope. And the fact is, the Cardinals have long seen the American Catholic Church as young and brash, just as much as the world sees the United States as young and brash. And the Cardinals thought America was powerful enough. We were controlling the world militarily and economically. They thought, well, you don't also need to control the world religiously. America was powerful enough without also having a pope. So again, I thought we'd see an African pope first. In fact, I thought we might see one this time around. There were a couple of extremely strong candidates from the continent of Africa. Africa has been underrepresented in the cardinals and the papacy, and for a long time they've been overdue for a pope. So I thought we might see our first African pope, and that would have been amazing. And there was a conservative candidate and a more liberal candidate. So there were a couple of great candidates from Africa. So I thought we might see one this time around. Instead, we got an American. So a couple points on that. One, the Cardinals may see America as being on the decline, and so they're not so worried about American hegemony over every aspect of human life at this point. And two, Leo the 14th, as we've said, appears to be Francis' handpicked successor. Francis, it looks like, was putting him in a position to succeed and grooming him to succeed. So this is the person Francis want, and Francis must have been lobbying hard with the Cardinals in his final days to make sure that he got his handpicked successor. So I think that's why we got an American, and I think it has much less to do with Robert Prevost being an American and much more to do with him being the guy that Francis wanted. So Francis got the guy he wanted. If Francis had wanted a guy from a different place, he probably would have gotten that guy. And that's why we got an American this time around. So we'll leave you with a couple of quotes of the day. This is from Pope Leo XIV in his first papal address from the balcony. God loves us, all of us. Evil will not prevail. This line was buried in the middle of his address, but I think it's perhaps the most important line, the most telling line in his papal address. I think this is him saying he's tired of people segregating themselves out, that God is for everyone, love is for everyone, and that we're going to fight evil. And I think it's telling that he said this and that he buried it right in the middle of his address. So it wasn't too obvious unless you read the transcript or were listening closely. Our quote of the day, number two. This is from Jonathan V. Last. He's an active Catholic and he's an editor of the Bulwark magazine. Pope Leo XIV is here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and he's all out of bubblegum. So I'll leave you with that quote today. Thank you so much, everyone. We will see you.